Someone says, well, how does a kid get like that? How does it happen? How does a nice kid become an alcoholic? How does a kid that seemed to be so set in life and had so many good attributes become a drug addict? How does a person become so careless and cold and cruel, even relevant to others and those that he loves or loved? You know what I've likened it to? I've likened it to an individual, two young boys that went by a second-hand store, a pawn shop. And in that pawn shop, they saw a trombone case. Now, a trombone is that instrument you play with a big long handle on it and the keys. A lot like a trumpet, only longer. And the case that they keep it in is a very strange-looking case with its indentation for the bowl section, the section where the long rod, cylindrical rods go. And so when they saw this case, they looked at it and they saw it was a nice interior, a satin interior, a leather exterior with all these grooves in it, and they thought to themselves, hey, somebody made that for something. And so they bought it for $4. And then they tried something to make it work or make the ownership of it worthwhile. They tried to use it as a suitcase. And you can imagine trying to shove things like that into it. They tried to use it as a lunch pail. And apart from getting an apple in one section, maybe a sausage in another, it just didn't work out. They even tried to use it as a fishing tackle box. And you can imagine what those treble gnarling hooks did to that lovely interior. And finally frustrated, thinking like this, we know it's good for something, but we can't figure it out. It's no good for us. They took it back to the pawn shop, sold it for $2. That's the way it goes. One day as those two boys are walking by that pawn shop, they look into the window. You know what they saw? They saw a trombone case. And in that trombone case was a trombone. And all of a sudden, every indentation, every mark, every groove made perfect sense. That the trombone case was made for the trombone. Do you know what that's what is meant when it says, in the image of God made he, referring to man. That man was made for God. And until a person has Christ, there's an emptiness. There's a void. There's a senselessness. There's a frustration. There's an unfulfilled experience called your existence. You know why? You were made for God. And without Christ, nothing fits. It doesn't work. And that's what leads people to become drug addicts. That emptiness, trying to fill it. Trying to find something that makes sense out of it. One after another, my friends died, or went to mental institutions, or went to incarceration, prisons, penitentiaries. I broke my parents' heart. My father moved away. He moved. He never even gave me the address. And I never saw my father or heard from my father until 4 years later on one occasion when I was in prison, when he sent down money. He just couldn't take anymore. Let me tell something else about a drug addict's life. Let me tell you something else. If a drug addict's life is like a bad dream, the life of his family is like a nightmare. My wife, I must admit, sometimes when you're away from home, you get a little more sensitive to them. I probably should be ashamed of myself, because I'm never more sensitive or appreciative of my wife than I am when I'm away from her. But one thing I'll say about my wife stuck with me. Maxine stuck with me through everything. You know what? I married her when she was 17 years old. 17 years old and a week. And she thought I had a little drug problem. And before long it became evident as I sold everything she had. I even sold her rings, her wedding rings. Matter of fact, the wedding ring she wears to this day is one that was her mother's, that was given to her. And it was just, I think earlier this year, late last year, that at an auction I saw an engagement ring. And I bought it. I gave it to my wife. She thought I was kind of foolish when I said, "Will you marry me?" But I gave it to her. I sold everything we had. Everything. I sold her clothes. You know what? As I'm standing here tonight, I don't even know that person anymore. When I am telling you my story, it's as if it's not my story, as if it's a person that I used to know, but I'm not that person anymore. I can't even understand how that person thought anymore. And when I went to prison, and I did go to prison, I went to prison 4 times, but I did what they call a stretch 3 times, ranging from a year down to as little as 3 months. The first time I went to prison, and they shut that door on me, something died. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this was really happening to me. Do you ever find yourself there? Maybe it's not drug addiction. Maybe it's some other kind of a prison. The door shuts on you. You think to yourself, this can't be happening to me. And in that prison, my wife would come and visit me. My wife would hitchhike sometimes, stick out her thumb and look for a lift. And sometimes she'd hitchhike, I suppose it'd be 2.5, 3 hours from Charlottetown, where she lived, to Halifax, where I was, in the Sackville Correctional Center. And when she came there was just a little plexiglass piece, just a piece of plexiglass with little holes in it, little indentations. And she traveled all that distance, and in the end she actually had my little daughter with her, who was born a little less than a year after we were married, carrying her in a backpack. And you could hardly talk to one another because there were others talking all along. And sometimes you just put your hands up against the glass, and she put her hands to the glass. And it was almost as if you could feel her. Listen, I resolved that when I get out of here, it's going to be different. When I get out of here, I'm going to be Joe Citizen. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to straighten up. I'm going to cut out this life. I'm going to walk away from it. But I'm just like others here tonight. You tried walking away from it. You can't. There's an old saying at home, you know what it is? You just can't make hay with a monkey on your back. I was a 3-time loser. I'd lost my friends. I'd lost my own personal integrity. I'd lost my family. I was a 3-time loser. 3 times in prison. Every time resolving, and whenever I got out, it lasted for a week. It lasted for 10 days maybe. But eventually someone would give me the phone call. The stuff had hit the street. My contacts were there, and I would be back at it, and sometimes not home for 3 and 4 months. And then there came the time when this woman, my wife, that had stuck by me through so much. One day when I came home, I hadn't been home for about 3 months, I came home very sick. As I sat on that couch, she turned around and she said, "Peter, I'm going to leave you." And I wanted to say, "No, don't leave me. You're all I got next to you. Don't leave me. Everybody else is gone. Don't leave me." I wanted to tell her I'd changed, but I couldn't change. I couldn't change. And here's what she said. She said, "Peter," she was only at that time maybe 22 years old, 23. She said, "My life is already ruined." 23 years old. Apart from one occasion, my wife never did drugs. Never. "My life is already ruined," she said, but I can't let you destroy the children. I can't let you destroy them. They gotta have hope. They gotta have hope. They don't even know anything about God.